Hello there, another opportunity to connect with you, and we're having those exclusive conversations. Today, well, I'll be introducing my guest to you shortly, but this is that favorite segment of yours, AM Exclusive. My guest is a former member of parliament for Kaikwe South. He's a former Minister of Information. He has a lengthy profile. I can't get into all of them, but currently he is CEO of the State Transport Corporation, and he is also a vice chair of the Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia campaign. I'm talking about none other than, you guessed it, Akomea. He's my guest today. Thank you for joining.
It's my pleasure. Welcome to my little office.
Not so little, but we'll take it that way. Let's start with what you've been up to here at the State Transport Corporation. It's been a while now since you've been at the helm of affairs. If I asked you how healthy the State Transport Corporation is today, what would you say?
Well, thank you. The State Transport Company enjoyed a golden period in the 3 years between the 3 years from 2017 to 2019, when the macro economy was very stable, the CD, inflation, petrol price, relatively very, very stable, probably the most stable throughout the Fourth Republic. And the State Transport Company saw a golden period. We introduced free meals on our buses. We had a new fleet. Our margins were good because our costs were constant and low. And we were the best transport company for the first 3 years. When COVID came in 2020, because of the difficult macro situation, we suffered a lot. Investments that we had made got lost through the bank crisis. We were victims. We lost millions of cedis that we had put aside.
You mean the banking sector cleanup?
Yeah, the banking sector crisis.
Right.
Individuals were paid, but corporates, we haven't gotten our money back. We lost millions in that crisis.
Approximately how many millions?
At that time, nearly 5 million that we had.
CDs?
Yes, that we had invested. 5 million CDs in 2019. It's a lot of money that we had invested in one of the investment firms that were shut down. And we lost those monies. Then the Francophone borders were shut, and 1/3 of our business comes from the Francophone business. We have terminals in the Abidjan, Ouagadougou, Lomé, Cotonou. And we're one of the biggest carriers, ferrying people from Cotonou, Lomé, Ouagadougou to Abidjan and back. And in fact, the Abidjan terminal alone was enough to pay our salaries every month. And then with the crisis, all that, with the borders being closed for 3 years, we lost all that business. And then because of the macro instability and the fall in the value, the constant fall in the value of the cedi, and so the constant rise in the price of fuel, our cost just kept escalating. Anytime the cedi lost value, and the price of spare parts changed, and the price of fuel changed. And when you track the price of fuel in the period between 2020 and 2023, and you put it beside our costs, we're barely able to just stay afloat.
Break even.
For example, in those first 3 years, fuel was about 27% of our costs. At the height of the crisis during COVID, fuel went to 62% of our costs. So one bus trip to Kumasi, 62% of the revenue go to buy fuel. And of course, spare parts also rose in tandem with fuel. So it was in a very difficult period.
And that was unsustainable.
Totally. And now The macro situation is relatively stable, thank God. We are coming out of the woods. The CD is relatively stable compared to the period between 2020 and 2023. Inflation is coming down. Price of fuel is a bit more stable. But the problem now is that our fleets are old. Our fleet, the newest fleet we have is about 5 years. And some of them are 9 years. So the biggest problem that we have now is to get a new fleet to be able to take advantage of the more stable macro environment. And that's what we are working on. We've sent delegations to a couple of bus manufacturing companies. They've come with their reports. We shortlisted some of the one or two who offer us a financial package that we can afford. And that's what we are working on. We're hoping that we'll be able, some of the new fleet to start coming before Christmas. So that in a nutshell is our situation.
Well, congratulations on the work you've done. But just feeding off what you said, the Francophone, terminals, it's been past those 3 years. Are you back to those
routes?
Yes,
we are back.
Because I recall there's even a time I've gone to Ouagadougou on one of these buses before. So I know you go to Burkina Faso. You are back. What's business like?
Is good. One thing that you are also in private business, one thing that our operations have taught me, and I hope that every politician too would have the same lesson. Macro stability is non-negotiable if you want your country to grow. It's non-negotiable. The Francophone countries, they have a very, very stable currency.
It's a common currency.
The CFA. One is a common currency shared by so many countries. So it's a huge market. Huge market. We do business in just about 4 of them: Benin, Lomé, Togo. So we do 4. But there's Senegal and some of the other countries and so on. But their currency is stable. The market is big, because you're looking at about 7, 8 countries. And because of the stability of their currency, which is the CFA, a lot of the problems that we have in terms of cost, business cost, fuel and all, they don't suffer those things. And it's taught me a salutary lesson that whatever we do going forward, we must maintain macro stability if you want your country to grow. There's no other way.
Well, there's been talk about the ECO or ECO, depending on how you want to, a common West African currency. That has not panned out. And of course, only God knows when it will see the light of day. Of course, if you have that commonality, then you can shore up your economies and have more of the stability you speak of.
But you see, and just to you have countries in Europe which are way, way, way ahead of us in terms of economic progress. These people had industrial revolutions 200 years ago and so on. But over the last 30 years, even they saw the need to have a common currency. They used to have the lira for Italy. They used to have the French franc for France, the British pound for Britain. They used to have
the British have gone back to but the Eurozone has done its
Germany used to have the Dutch mark. And all Greece used to have some drachma or something. Even they found out that if they didn't have a common currency and a single market, they were not going to survive the competition from the Far East, Japan and China and Korea and so on. So even they have to come together and adopt one currency. So we who are much, much more poorer and who need economic development more urgently, we have no excuse not to give ourselves a stable currency and a single currency.
But have we done enough to get there? This thing that we're talking about, the ECO, has been on the drawing board for as long as I remember.
It's the political will. When you look at the developments towards the adoption of the euro, it was the same problem. Germany is for it, UK is not for it. Greece is for it. Italy is not for it. So Germany and France, they started. 2 countries. And then another country will join. Another country will join. So they started off like 2 countries. Now it's about, now even former Eastern Europe are all scrambling to join. So maybe instead of looking at the whole West Africa of about 16 countries, we can have maybe just Ghana and Nigeria having a single currency. If it works for 1 year, 2 years, you'll find out that the other countries will come in small. Because this single currency thing, they started when I was in primary school. It still hasn't worked. And we continue battling with instability. And you know, every time these countries in these our economies, small economies, every time the currency falls, cost of living goes up automatically because we're not able to build an economy that is self-sufficient. So it is absolutely non-negotiable that we give ourselves macro stability. Is the most basic requirement that you need to be able to grow your industries, grow your businesses, improve the standard of living for your people.
I have a few quick questions on the operations of STC related to what you've been saying, and then we can move on to other matters. You mentioned the CD, and you said, I mean, it's much more stable now. But if I do the juxtaposition to about 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, at the height of all this, exchange rate issue, we're still looking at a CD that was around 16 point something, 17 to the dollar back then, and everybody was, raising a storm about it. We are there again. The CD is 16 point something to the dollar. In some instances, people charge 17 to the dollar. But the Swiss franc is 18 plus.
That is why I said...
The pound is 20 plus.
I know that. That's why I said relatively.
Relatively, right.
Yes. I mean, it's still not the best compared to 2017 to 2019.
Right.
But compared to 2020 to 2023, it's far, far better. And when you chart the value of the CD in those 2020 to 2023, you see the CD is literally every week. And once it drops, once the value, if it drops, it means the price of the dollar in terms of the CD has gone up. So anything that you use dollar to buy, spare parts, fuel, even water, because what you need to purify the water is imported. Electricity, what you need, the gas, the fuel, are all imported. So it's been a terrible period between 2020 and 2023, but now it's relatively stable. Better than that time. Compared to that time.
And I'm sure inflation is also, you mentioned inflation, for 5 months it's been dropping.
Yeah, it's been
the latest figure is an increment,
but we want it to go to single digits, but at least from 50 plus it's come to about 20. It's an improvement, but we want it to come to single digits. Then
the experts say that will happen in, around 2027, and that the projection of both the IMF and government is that by December you were hoping to reach 15%. The economists are saying it's not feasible where we are now. We are 21.5% as of September. So that's another.
But the direction is positive. That is coming down.
The direction is positive, but apart from this latest.
But all of this forecast by the economists and all, is everything remaining the same. You can have some extraordinary measures that can fasten it. So it's actually not written in stone.
Oh, definitely not.
They're just looking at the prevailing situation, which could change.
Which could change.
Depending on the kind of policies that are adopted.
Okay. The final bits on this. I want us to look at the performance of state-owned enterprises and why there seems to be this degeneration where a lot of them, there's a pattern of non-performance. They are hemorrhaging funds and not raking in that much for the state. And there's also a competitor. And, in this business, competition is good. People ask me sometimes, and I'm going to channel that to you, STC seems to be struggling, but we see the VIPs and others, and seemingly they are doing better. What's your take on that?
They are not.
Is it that we are not seeing? Those people are not seeing what is in there.
They are not doing better because we're operating under the same conditions. Now, the state enterprises, like I said, and it's not just STC. Between 2017 and 2019, those 3 years, when the cedi was stable, inflation was single digits, the deficit was manageable, and the macro situation was stable, the state enterprises were doing well. If you just take STC, we doubled our revenues in 2017 from 2.3 million cedis a month to 5.2.
That's more than double.
A month. We paid government $1.7 million in those 3 years. I think I have some picture here where we're giving the finance minister. This is the boardroom. We paid government $1.7 million in those 3 years. Arrears that have been accumulated, SNIT arrears, workers' retirement benefits, suppliers who we owed, we started paying aggressively. Those days, every week you find a new bank sitting in my office looking for business. We managed to leverage our balance sheet to import on our own 100 new buses.
I see.
We put aside nearly $5 million into an account, a high interest bearing account, so we can be using that to be retiring the arrears. This is STC. And then all of it went down the ground when the macro situation changed. And I'm sure it's the same story for SOEs. That's why I made a point earlier that if the macro situation is not stable, I mean, take your company, multimedia. You rely on adverts. Now, if the people who bring you the adverts, their costs are going up every week because the currency is, the value of the currency is falling, and they are spending more on energy, they are spending more on imports and so on, you would find out that the adverts that they will bring to you would go down.
True.
So that is it. You have to have, and so if you create the conditions, if you take STC, the transport sector, for example, we buy fuel at commercial rates. We buy spare parts at commercial rates. What is our revenue? Our revenue is the fares. The fares are controlled. So you face a cost structure which is determined by the market. And you face a revenue structure which is controlled. You can't just increase transport fares. It's determined by a bureaucracy.
So in a way, your hands are tied.
Your hands are tied. So if the transport fare is fixed at, say, 40 cedis to Kumasi, and because of instability, diesel price goes up, a spare parts goes up, but the fare stays at 40 cedis, what's going to happen to the business?
So sustainability has been a challenge.
So and I'm sure it's the same story across many SOEs.
Well, with the SOEs, some of them were bleeding long before, even this current administration took over, and some have continued to bleed. There have been questions about privatization, but I get the points you are making, definitely. Yes. Very final bit. After this, I'll not go back. You spoke about the 100 fleet, the buses you brought on board, and you said a number of your vehicles are old.
Yes.
Okay. I want you to tell me, are there plans to get new ones? And finally, there was also this issue about some deputies coming.
But that's what I mentioned to you earlier, that our biggest problem
the resistance from
the biggest problem now we have is that now the macro situation is relatively stable. So we should be coming back to where we were between 2017 and 2019. Unfortunately, our fleet is now old. In intercity transportation, 4 or 5 years. So these are buses that do 14-hour journeys, 12-hour journeys. After 4 or 5 years, you need to replace them. Right. Because then the cost of, they drink more fuel or more diesel. The spare parts are more frequent visits to the workshop and so on.
So basically maintenance is even more expensive.
Maintenance is even more expensive. Right. So we need to change the fleet to be able to take advantage of the relatively macro situation. And I said to you earlier that that's what we've been focused on. And we sent delegations to some 5 bus manufacturing companies to see what financial terms they are. And 2 have been shortlisted. And we are working on getting an agreement with them so we can get some new buses.
Is that likely to happen before the election?
Well, shipment alone takes 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And then you need some parliamentary approval for waiver of duty. So we are hoping that things can be expedited for us. So that's the situation that we are. Regarding the appointment, yes, one of my deputies went on retirement, and there was a replacement, and the workers thought that because of the fleet situation, they didn't need a replacement, and that if we had a lot more, the situation was more regular, more fleet and more routes being plied and so on, then you probably would need to fill that vacancy. But at that time, or at this time, where the fleet position is very poor, they didn't think it was the right time to, and government listened to them, and the replacement was withdrawn.
Well, let's now delve into other matters of national scope, starting with illegal mining, aka Galamsey, and the ravages of same. I don't think I should. I'll be preaching to the choir if I started talking about it. You know already. Even in recent times, we've had the Democracy Hub embarking on a demonstration. Some of them ended up incarcerated, police and prison custody, and a number of them are still, in fact, those who have been apprehended are still in custody. There has also been that recent demonstration at Okponglo, Stop Galamsey Now, Free the Citizens as well, with a larger outpouring of what we notice, younger people, you know, and a female contingent, all pouring out into the streets. The president put his presidency on the line for Galamsey, and people are saying, this has simply not worked. What's your take?
You would agree that a lot of successes were chalked in the fight against Galamsey from the period 2017 to 2020, when the president said, I've put my presidency on the line, and put up a ministerial task force, put the army behind them, so on. All the reports, the turbidity levels, turbidity means the clarity of the water that were processed. The
NTUs, yeah.
Yes. All those reports showed that there was a massive improvement. In 2020, the issue became politicized.
It did?
Yes. Because it became an issue in the political campaign of 2020, when the opposition party, the NDC, went around communities engaged in Galamsey and told them that if you vote for us, we would free your people who have been jailed for engaging in Galamsey if you vote for us. And if you vote for us, we've brought people who will be in charge of giving concessions so that they can know you, and then they will give you land so you can continue your Galamsey. So when you have the flag bearer of the opposition in 2020 making it a campaign issue, and you have executives of the opposition party making it a campaign issue, that the government is fighting you, arresting you, and so on, when we can, we'll change all of that. We'll free your people, and we'll give you more land. And many in the NPP believe that in a lot of these areas, NPP lost their seats. No, it's a strong belief in the party. So it became politicized in the 2020 elections. And you will realize that after the 2020 elections, the national fight against Galamsey seems to have stalled. Now, Ghana Water is sounding an alarm bell that the level of destruction of the water bodies is coming to an a level that cannot be tolerated. That's a wake-up call. So it is now incumbent on the government, whether politics or no politics, to do something. Not to be afraid of the politics, to disregard whatever political repercussions and do something. And I am sure that in the very next few days, because already the president has set up a second ministerial task force. And I'm sure in the very next few days they will announce a program. And of course the situation too has been heightened by all the concerns and demonstrations that have been expressed. So I cannot see how the government will not act. So very soon I'm sure there will be a program to deal with it, at least to restore the water bodies to the necessary turbidity level.
Well, the experts tell us that even if we stopped those activities today, it will take about a century for the water bodies to sustain themselves, return to any reflection of what they used to be when some of us were,
I don't know if that,
were
I don't know if that is
and
true.
that's not only one
second. I don't know if that is true because you saw with the renewed fight in 2017
how the water bodies started to look.
The turbidity levels improved dramatically. The people came to your own show, Joy FM, and were given the figures about the turbidity levels. I think is it a water commission or something?
I'm not sure.
I particularly remember that particular discussion where on news, where they came and showed. So I don't know if it will take 50 years. No.
But
maybe the water commission.
50, even if it is 50.
Even if it's 1 year.
Even if it is 1 year.
Or 6 months.
Consider, you see, what we are doing now is not just about us. It is about generations to come. And maybe consequences they will have to face that they didn't create, that we created and bequeathed to them. You want to give good things to your progeny.
I wish, like you, that now this business about the charge sheet and all of that, you would agree that it was a police. I don't speak for the police, but what I saw or what I know in these situations, that normally there's a soup. If, as we sit here, there are 4 or 5 of us in this office, if somebody who is being wanted by the police had been chased, 2 or 3 people, and they run, the police is told they've come to this office, and they come here and they find 6 of us sitting here, they will collect all of us. They will collect all of us. That's what they call soup. Later on, they will say, oh, this is Ben. No, Ben couldn't have been part of it. Oh, this is Nana. No. But if they come here, they are looking for somebody, they get the information, the person is in this room, and they come and meet 6, 7 of us, they will swoop all of us.
True.
Later on,
when you've kept them for 2 weeks.
But listen,
that is where it becomes
the court,
a problem.
not by the police, by the court. Now, Ben, sometimes we have to be a little real to ourselves. In the United Kingdom, people were demonstrating some environmental thing, the same.
I know what you're talking about.
And they went and blocked roads, highway. They were jailed for 5 years.
Yeah, each of them got 5 years. I remember.
Some got 4, some got 5. United Kingdom. For blocking roads, highway, not a hospital road, highway. So, the way when he listens to some of the talk, it's like some barbaric country, which is.
I know those in the UK went to certain excesses.
Showing people where power lies.
In the UK, in the US, I have seen some of these happen, environmentalists, and you say, oh, a good cause. But they have gone to certain excesses that have been over and above per the laws that apply there.
In the UK case, they block the road, say.
It's a conversation that can be had.
Yeah.
But in light of our Galamsey fight and everything, would you say that, well, we've punished them a bit. It's time to let them go. Do you think?
But there's 2 weeks, I'm sure it's almost up. That 2 weeks is almost up. If it's not going to be up this week, I'm sure it's almost up.
So they should be there till every last
Well, I am not the court, but I'm saying...
No, I'm just seeking your opinion on this.
If I hear some remorse, I'll probably join the call for leniency. But you don't hear any call for remorse. The people themselves... And you see the situation where people were seizing police keys and running away and threatening, and then the next day they say they are sick. Preventing people from going to the hospital to seek treatment. And yet the next day they have to be taken to, request that they should be taken to hospital because they are sick. Where's the equity? And you don't hear much about it. All you hear is, hey, high-handed, hey. Okay. This is the court. I'm not a court.
Let's talk about the economy a bit. You are vice chair of the Akomea campaign, and there's been a lot of talk about the economy. Some have even suggested that he's conveniently decoupled himself from the economy, and is now focusing on IT digitalization. Of course, that also feeds into the economy. But he made mention of the fact that if the fundamentals were weak, the exchange rate would expose you. You know the exchange rate. You've spoken about some of the fundamentals and even how they impact your work. Are the fundamentals weak? How do we strengthen them?
It is a fact to everybody that after 2020, the fundamentals became weak, isn't it? I mean, I wouldn't say that some policies of government could have contributed, but nobody foresaw COVID. In fact, you listen to John Mahama talk about the impact of COVID. I'm sure you've seen the speech he gave in Harvard, at Harvard University, talking about the devastation. If I had a moment, I would have read it to you, about the impact of COVID on African economies. He talked about how the COVID situation has dragged 55 million Africans into poverty, how it's created huge deficits and led many African countries to debt crisis and so on. So the fundamentals became seriously weakened, and not just Ghana or Africa, worldwide. In the UK, it led to a turnover of about 4 or 5 prime ministers in 4 or 5 months. In the United Kingdom. So you have to take account of it. The fundamentals of the economy became very weak. And of course, it will reflect in the city, as we've discussed and as we all know. So Akomea spoke the truth then, and he's speaking the truth now. When the fundamentals were better, between 2017 and 2019, the pre-COVID period, we saw the city. Look at the city from January 2017 to December 2019, the rate. So it is a true statement that Akomea made at that time, and it's a true statement today. The fundamentals were weak, and that reflected in the power of the city going forward.
But a quick interjection before going forward. If your economic policy and management are apt, you don't just plan for current situations that may be rosy. You plan for turbulence, because there would be a rainy day. We were caught pants down when this rainy day came. And part of it was also borrowing. And not just borrowing for projects that sometimes did not materialize. We spoke, for example, about the Pualugu Dam, $1 billion. Some little investment purportedly was made there. There's no dam. And we could talk about a number of other things. Economists, finance people always tell you that part of our problem was the fact that we borrowed and we did not expend the borrowed sums into activities that would then feed off and generate income. And that is why we felt the shocks we did, the way we did. Would you agree?
I have said to you that there's no doubt that some government omissions or commissions would have contributed. So there's no doubt about it. We've been in this country where monies that were borrowed were used to conduct research on the political parties' chances at the elections. So there have always been government commissions and omissions. But you see, we are a developing country. Our economy hasn't got the kind of resilience like the more advanced countries. The Ghanaian economy, in terms of resilience and depth and growth, comes nowhere near the German economy or the
It's the biggest in Europe.
or the UK economy or even the American economy. These are economies with, if you compare their resilience to ours, there's no comparison. But even they were affected badly by COVID. And I've mentioned to you how in the United Kingdom, the United Kingdom has a history dating back 1,000 years ago. Because of the crisis with COVID, they had 4 or 5 prime ministers in 4 or 5 months. So it's not just, and the UK, you can't compare the resilience of the UK economy to Ghana, or the American, or the German. When Angela Merkel was in parliament and the deficit was ballooning, and one opposition MP complained, Angela Merkel, I'm sure you have the footage, he said, we are not talking about deficit here. This is not the time to talk about deficit. Similar statement that President Kufuor made and said we know how to bring. It's a worldwide thing. Affected every economy, including the economies that are much, 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 much more advanced.
Right. So
it doesn't mean that government is totally, but you see, these are opponents who say we should give them power. They brought the same economic situation to this country when there was no COVID. The economy in 2011-2012 grew at 14%. Oil revenue had become a factor in the Ghanaian economy. And yet, 2 years down the line, by 2014, you saw what happened to the city. It became the worst currency in the world, or the second worst currency in the world. 2014, the crisis. And even if you had your own dollars, they said that you cannot go and take it. And the next year, we had to go to the IMF. There was no international crisis.
Well, they had the energy situation to deal with.
Which energy situation?
Unless Doomsaw didn't, hit where you were, they had that situation to deal with.
But Doomsaw was not because of some international situation.
Which led to... A crisis is a crisis.
Yes, but...
They had to deal with Ebola. You have not had to deal with Ebola.
Talking of a crisis...
Though there was a scourge in the sub-region, not necessarily Ghana.
Doomsaw was their...
A crisis is a crisis.
Doomsaw was their own creation.
Okay.
Yes.
And it wasn't a creation from all the way from Rawlings. If you look at rural urban electrification through Kufuor, through Atta Mills and Mahama, it was the NDC's creation.
You remember what they themselves told us had caused the Doomsaw? You remember?
Which is which one specifically?
They said some pipeline had burst in Togo. You remember? And they said some ship had sank in South Africa. So please, let's not go there. But
okay.
The bottom line was that there was no international crisis coming anywhere near COVID or the Russian-Ukraine war. And yet, the currency was the second most, the weakest currency in the whole world in 2014.
Okay.
And we had to go to the IMF.
I think we'll cap it off.
So these are opponents. They can't offer the Ghanaian people anything better because the record is there.
I want us to talk about the Akomea campaign, but just on the currency, you know that we've flip-flopped, been our own currency within this period, these last 2 years, has been the second worst in the world. Only, I think, second to the Sri Lankan rupee at a point. So these juxtapositions, I guess they are lessons for both political parties.
The only difference is that
to learn from.
There's a major crisis.
Okay. Let's talk about the Akomea campaign. How well is it going? I've seen some forecasts, some saying that John Mahama will win. A few, and it's interesting because initially there was a report from the MPP saying they were neck and neck. Then there was recently another report that said, oh, the vice president had a narrow lead and all of that. How's the campaign going? Are you expecting to break the eight that John Mahama's party has picked?
Yes, we would break the 8. Now, okay, because you ended up on the balloting, let me start with that one. You know, we have said from day one, 1 year, 2 years ago, that we will break the 8. Mm. This is way back before any balloting. Mm? So, any justification about breaking the 8 is way, way before the balloting. The justifications that are happening now, the NDC and all the other people, is related to the balloting. So it's just self-serving. If they were at number 7, they would have said something. If they were at number 10, they would have said something.
But the same with your party.
No,
if you had picked Asiaho 13, you would have said something. If you had picked 5, you would have said something.
We are talking about the 8. Mm. That's what you ended up. Mm. Now, we have said from day one, before the balloting, before we knew the position of anybody, that we would break the 8. Mm. And then, John Mahama goes to pick 8. Mm-hmm. And we have said from day one that we'll break the 8. Mm-hmm. And now he puts himself at 8. Mm-hmm. So for us, it falls into our strategy. Okay. He is now the 8. So we'll break. I don't have a problem. All the things that they are saying is just post justification after the ballot. Ours is pre-ballot strategy. Okay. Now, the campaign is going very well. Dr. Akomea has tons and tons of energy. He is campaigning more than any other candidate. He's doing 3 constituencies a day. I don't know of any candidate who's doing 3 constituencies a day. His wife, Samira, has opened another front. And the running mate has also opened a 3rd front. And we are planning a 4th front, which I won't disclose now but when it starts, you will see. So our campaign is going...
Who's leading that 4th front? Even if you don't have to say it, who's leading that?
Let it happen, I'll let you know. But I'm one of the main actors on that 4th front.
Okay.
But it's a major front that you will see. So we are campaigning the hardest. We are campaigning the hardest. And so, and our message is the best message. If I ask you, even you, what is the NDC plan to achieve macro stability? You can't tell me anything. You can't. You cannot. But Akomea says that we would rein in fiscal responsibility. We'll change the law that bases deficit on the projection of revenue. Mm-hmm. We'll change it to make the projection be based on actuals, the previous year's revenue. We will cut expenditure by farming a lot of public expenditure now to the private sector. If you take one of the major points of expenditure by any government is roads, road infrastructure. Akomea says, I'll farm it to the private sector where it is commercially viable. So, I mean, look at the international highway between Aflao and Elubo. This is the international, West African International Highway. Look at it. It's been like this for how many years? That road is commercially viable because of the volume of traffic between Accra to Takoradi, Accra to Aflao, and vice versa. If you put in the necessary structures, you can get private investment that will come in and build you a 6-lane and toll for 5 years or 10 years. Once you put in the proper regulatory framework. That's what Akomea is going to do. Look at Accra Kumasi. Highly commercial road. Look at the state that it is in. And government hasn't got the money to do it. And yet we are putting in what little that we get. Leave it to the private sector. They would go and do the feasibility and tell you, we will ask for proposals, do an RFP. We'll come and tell you, look, with 2,000 cars going in and out, we project it to be 2,800 cars for the next 10 years. We can do it 6 lane and charge 100 cedis toll. So you will get your 6 lane. The accidents will cut down because 80% of accidents are headlong collision because it's a single carriageway. The journey time will be cut by 2-3 hours. Kumasi is 250 kilometers. Why are we spending 6 hours? If you have a 6 lane, you can do that in 2 hours, cut you 3 hours. And I'm in that business, so I know. It's just the idea and putting in the regulatory framework. There are huge companies. And look at the University of Ghana. When I was at Legon, the entire population was about 6,000. Today it's about 40,000. You know why? Because they put in the framework that allow private people to provide accommodation. It's the same thing. So we're going to free up a lot of public expenditure from the public purse. And we'll be able to cut about 30 billion cedis spending.
30 billion cedis.
So that we'll hold in the deficit.
All right.
We would support the currency with the gold purchase program. You know gold is money.
The gold coin that the Bank of Ghana is issuing?
No, the gold purchase program is taking the gold, refining it to international standard.
Oh, I think I now know what you're talking about.
Look, recently, right. I won't mention the name of it, but one of the multinational companies had about 3 billion cedis that they needed to change into dollars so they can use to pay dividend of investors and also to pay suppliers of equipment and so on. 3 billion, actually 3.2 billion. And they informed government. And they were offered gold. And they took it. They were offered gold to that value of 3.2 billion cedis. And they took it. They went and sell the gold, make the dollars and go and pay. Can you imagine if this 3.2 billion cedis had been put on the market to buy dollars from just one multinational company, what it would have done? So Akomea is saying the gold purchase program is going to become a major economic policy. The UK, when the British pound, when you go into the vaults of the Bank of England, they have over 4,000 tons of gold.
I mean, this is commonplace in the US, Fort Knox and others. Yes, we know these things.
Which they use, but we produce the gold here.
Right.
And so when you look at the practical steps to stabilize the economy, the NDC, what do they have? As against Akomea.
I see.
The only problem, they say that Akomea and Kufuor are the same. I don't know how.
So the Akomea campaign is very healthy. I just want us, for the sake of time, I want us to wrap on this final point.
Okay.
In less than a minute, if you can manage it. It's the twilight of Nana Addo Dankwa Kufuor's presidency.
Yeah.
What will be his legacy in less than a minute?
Okay, 2 quick answers. Free SHS is not in any doubt. And we should just improve it to make it more sustainable. But on the matter of legacy, I am a little cautious. Look, I didn't see Kwame Nkrumah. But we've all know when Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown, the national euphoria and the pushback against Kwame Nkrumah in 1966. Today, is regarded as the biggest hero in Africa. You forget about Kwame Nkrumah. Kufuor, just a couple of years ago, the NDC was telling the whole world how bad the Kufuor government had been. Today, just a couple of years later, the NDC is touting Kufuor as one of the best presidents the country has had. So I'm a little cautious about legacies. Let's wait.
Has Kufuor not, he's enjoyed a certain, even among folk who are in the opposition, and over the years, even in 2008, when his administration was outed, he had served his term.
Yeah.
I mean, he was saluted for the school feeding program, and I think there's a difference.
Oh, you didn't listen to
I think there's a difference.
No, Ben, you are wrong. You didn't listen to the campaign in 2008.
I didn't.
Oh, they blasted Kufuor, this is the West government. They even call him 50 cents. They said he had gone and hung some
when he
they
awarded
gave him a nickname. They called him Wawa, Hotel Wawa.
But that is politics. It's different from acknowledging the legacy of
everything. They said the man had stolen half the gold in the Ghana Bank. The Bank of Ghana had about 8 tons. He had stolen 4 tons.
Okay, so
you know, and everything, and so people should. But today, they themselves say Kufuor is. So I'm saying, when it comes to legacies, maybe let some time pass. But at Kufuor, immediately, I mean, you can talk about free SHS if you can't talk about anything at all. And let's wait for another 6-7 years, and then we'll be in a better position to evaluate his legacy. All right.
It's been great having this conversation with you.
Thank you.
I hope the next time we meet, we'll not be playing gata to gata.
Or tota.
Or tota.
At 37.
And definitely not at 37. But
maybe,
this has
maybe
been...
we played it at Joy FM. Your
or maybe one of the, what do you call those?
AstroTurfs.
AstroTurfs. Maybe we'll find an AstroTurf.
And also now,
and go and play
CAF has agreed that we can play at the Accra Sports Stadium.
That's a relief.
Yeah, that's a relief. So maybe at the Accra Sports Stadium.
That's a big relief.
Come again anytime.
We have our sports challenge coming up, so
I'm here anytime. Come again anytime you want to talk about anything. Come.
He is CEO of the STC, the State Transport Company, and he also is a vice chair of the Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia campaign. It's been a great pleasure. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And this has been an AM exclusive with Benjamin Akakpo. Thank you for watching.